Simply put, iCache is the memory of Star Citizen. Right now, Star Citizen servers are individual shards that communicate very little with one another. Aside from your global inventory, there are things in the game that will go away if the server goes down. Eventually, servers restart. Or they crash, and so all that information is lost. Say, for example, your ship's location, your location, any boxes or weapons or food that you put on your ship, all of that is not saved for the most part. What iCache is supposed to do is transfer that information onto a server that is connected to all servers, so that any information that is saved on one can be transferred to another if that server goes down. In other words, this is the groundwork for doing something like server meshing, where players can transition from server to server seamlessly, like in, say, EVE Online. But as CIG has alluded to recently, there is more to iCache and what it's going to do for Star Citizen than just transferring information. To simplify the video and to make it easier for you to understand, I'm going to break it into two major categories: world state changes and player state changes. The latter creating one of the biggest impacts on your experience in Star Citizen moving forward. So let's begin with world state changes and how iCache is going to affect those. One of the big differences you're going to notice when iCache comes online is that when you log off in Star Citizen, no matter where you are, you're going to end up right back where you were the last time you played. Whether you were standing off on some moon next to your ROC or your parked ship, or you were flying around in space and the server went down and you perhaps fear that you lost your cargo load. Fear not, because with iCache, all of that information will be permanently saved and will be exactly as you left it when you return. This is, of course, as many of you may already know, what CIG refer to as global persistence. Global persistence is absolutely dependent on iCache, and without it, it can't work. And this creates a number of very interesting scenarios for which this video has been created to explore. If you log off anywhere in the verse and your player stays exactly where they were, next to the ship that you parked on some planet's surface, and say somebody were to run across it, well, you've left yourself open to the possibility that that ship could be hijacked, or you might be killed or even kidnapped. Far less nefarious, but equally as concerning, could be wear and tear on your ship. Imagine leaving your Harbinger parked out on the sand dunes of Daymar and a sandstorm blows by when you've logged off. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if you log back in to find that some of your ship's systems have been damaged, or worse, maybe your ship's flipped over and is lodged somewhere in a sand dune. I mean, who likes sand? It's rough and coarse and gets everywhere. Even more concerning than the average player's ship, though, would be ships of the line. Ships like the Javelin won't be readily able to park anywhere and therefore will likely always remain out in space somewhere, meaning that organizations with big, expensive capital ships will always have to be on their guard for the potential that somebody might come along and wreck them. Aside from the fear of things exploding and being destroyed while they're offline, though, there's also the excitement of being able to find wrecks of former ships or evidence of former battles, because wrecks too will no longer disappear after battles. They'll stay there until they're salvaged or until the cargo inside of them is taken away. This in fact makes the act of exploring very rewarding for people who come equipped with some gear to salvage expensive parts off ships they might find, because it could be in fact a common occurrence to find the wreck of a pirate ship or a player ship that has been abandoned and completely forgotten. One of the other really cool side effects of having iCache come online with ships, though, could also be your ship's appearance, as wear and tear will no longer go away when you park your ship or log off and log back on again. Dirt and grime and even battle scars will stay from session to session, giving your ship a bit more of a unique identity. It'll no longer look like every other player's ship in the verse. Whatever you've done in it will be shown proudly on the outside, unless of course you've taken it through a ship wash, if those exist, or you've fixed up and patched the scars, if that's something that you want to do. If in fact you're wondering if this is a feature, by the way, this is something that Star Citizen's developers have said for a long time they'd like to do. In fact, they've shown some previews in recent memory of the interior of the new Starlifter and its wear and tear textures that will show up in the ship over time if you've not cleaned it. Even more exciting than perhaps the saving of ship states could be the saving of world states. One of the features that players of Star Citizen have long desired are player-ownable locations, such as player bases or hubs in cities and apartments, etc. iCache is going to allow for that to happen because it's required in order for the servers to remember where you've created your base or where you've purchased your apartment or house on a planet's surface. This understandably by itself would completely transform the way most players actually enjoy Star Citizen. Having your own house in a specific part of the universe will make you gravitate towards that area in every play session that you have. But this of course hints towards the idea that players will also own territory that could potentially be coveted and therefore contested by other organizations, setting up a whole reason for two orcs to go head-to-head in a battle to take something valuable from the other side. But there's more, and I'm just scratching the surface here. Stuff like missions will also be completely changed with iCache. You'll be able to have things like theme parks. Twitch Pacheco, the criminal from Area 18, will no longer just have one mission for you to do. She'll have a whole slew of missions for you to do, and the server will remember which ones you've done, and your reputation will be affected with her and her organization depending on how you've performed and what missions you've done. And this will open and close doors depending on the type of player you've decided to become. And all of this leads us into our final category, and that's player effects. This is going to be the biggest change in the way that Star Citizen is experienced by its player base. As I've already alluded to here, reputation is going to be something that becomes a real factor, much more so than it currently is. It's a very basic system at present. It doesn't take into account much. As I've said here with missions, it will take a lot more into account and be much more difficult to affect in major ways, meaning if you've decided to become a criminal for a long period of time, it may be difficult to switch back to being a good guy. And vice versa, if you've been a good guy for a long time, Twitch Pacheco might not want to talk to you because you've got a reputation for being a goody two-shoes or a bounty hunter that's after criminals like her. But aside from reputation, the player's inventory will also be a major factor in the way players experience the game. No longer will you have a global inventory. Inventory will be physicalized and tied to specific locations, either a ship or a hab or a house or a player base somewhere in the universe. Meaning that every time that you go out into the verse, you're going to have to weigh your options with what you are going to risk losing when you go out into the verse, because dying will always be a real possibility. You'll never probably want to take your entire life savings with you, for example, because, well, you never know when you're going to run into pirates and when they're going to want to take that stuff from you by force. But most importantly, and this could possibly be the biggest major way that Star Citizen changes with iCache, and that's by its ability to enable something called the death of a spaceman. If you don't know, Star Citizen has a plan to make death for your character permanent. Now, before you jump to too many conclusions here, that doesn't mean that you lose everything that your player owns. Rather, your character, with all their attributes, their reputation, etc. that they've collected over however long you've stayed alive, goes away. with the inventory passing on to your character's next of kin, which is something that you'll have the option to write in when you start playing Star Citizen. It'll perhaps be your son, a relative, or a good friend, and that will be somebody that you become in the event of your character's death. The reason why iCache is required for this technology to work is because of the way that permadeath is planned to work. Star Citizen wants to remember the types of injuries your character has gone through, the age of your character, as well as the wear and tear on the DNA of your character. If you've gone through a lot of clones, or you've been injured severely several times, that's going to play a major role in how likely it is that your character will die in a major event, like an explosion. And this feature means that the specter of death looms high over every player's every move. Everything will have to be carefully considered, and no longer will you be able to run into a base full of pirate enemies and not worry about dying. No longer will you be able to hold backspace to get back to the space station more quickly. Or to put this into a more realistic context, no longer will traders be able to hold backspace or just log off if a pirate comes and tries to threaten them unless they give them the load. It's something that they're going to have to face and deal with on a regular basis if they're not careful. But in the reverse, pirates too will have to be extremely careful. No longer can they carelessly log off anywhere, because that too can have real consequences. They'll be hunted by bounty hunters and police alike, and every time you log off, you'll always have the fear that when you log back on again, you may find yourself already gone. So then you guys can probably see why iCache is such an important pillar, a foundation for the future for Star Citizen. And while many of these features will likely
You'd better not be filling my daughter's head with stories.
location
She hardly listens to them anyways.
Hello?
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Attackers incoming. Stop the payload.
And face me.
Personne n'échappe à mon regard.
Are you chicken?
I'm on fire!
Enemy turret ahead. 6, reporting for duty. Is that the best you can do? Enemy turret ahead!
Oh, let's break it! Damn!
Helden sterben nicht.
Enemy turret theory disproven. Chicken!
30 seconds remaining.
Hello? Just a little longer. Bear down!
This is not your time. There comes the stop. Огонь по готовности.
Let off some steam!
10 seconds
I did not give him a turret. Destroyed.
Heroes never die.
What is that melody? Taking out the welfare! Greeting!
score 0-0. Switching sides. Prepare to attack. Select your hero.
Justice will be done.
I'm ready to kill.
Attack commences in 30 seconds.
It is not my preference to see to matters personally.
Are you
I will
chicken?
see them done. Bonjour.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Attack commencing.
Are you
Escort
chicken?
the payload.
These hypotheses. Evidence suggests that
Don't worry, my friend. I have your shield. Your time's run out. Are you chicken?
elementary application.
I'm under attack.
Payload is approaching its destination.
Activate.
Victory. Play of the game.